All right, well, today is World Day Against Child Labour. The International Labour Organization, ILO, and UNICEF have warned that millions more of children are at risk of being pushed into child labour as a result of COVID-19 crisis. This could lead to the first rise in child labour after 20 years of progress. It further warns that children already in child labour may be working longer hours or under worsening conditions. Global estimates in 2017 showed that 152 million children were in child labour worldwide. When I joined via Skype by Cornelius Williams, Associate Director of Child Protection at UNICEF. A very good afternoon to you, sir, and thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon.
Now, why are we seeing the fact that this pandemic, that COVID-19 is causing this increase in instances of child labour? And I know, we've made some progress the past couple of years. Is that now going to be a failure on our part in terms of the fact that we're seeing this happening all over again?
Yes. I mean, basically, it would be a policy failure because the containment measures that have been put in place in most countries, the lockdown, has had an implication for families in terms of their economic and their financing and their economy. And we know that actually the drivers of child labor is when a family is in poverty, when a family has shocks in their livelihood, when a family cannot access credit. We also know that actually when schools are closed, which is a safe place for kids, that actually children, that they would have this kind of shocks in their family, and the shocks would make family make decisions which are not positive for children. So we can we can see that children are going to get more engaged, and we are just sounding the alarm as the pandemic expands.
I mean, we talk about the fact that there was progress made, but, child labour has still been quite rife, particularly in the African continent and in Asia. Are we really keeping a sort of real record of these instances of child labour, particularly in those two continents, where sometimes we'll even hear of big companies using children, whether it is companies that make handbags or shoes, for example, that, children are being used to work in those factories. Are we really keeping a proper record in terms of what's really happening in the two continents?
Yeah, I mean, but again, the responsibility of monitoring these, what we call the supply chain, goes back to the industry and goes back actually to the government. So one of the things we're saying about monitoring the supply chain is that business actually, the unions and government, you should have this tripartite conversation, and children should be part of this conversation. In addition to that, next year we will be coming out with a new estimate of child labor.
Now, one of the issues is the fact that, we often don't see, whether it's not reported or it's not adequately reported, where we see people being held to account or accountable, or even arrests due to companies or owners of those companies being prosecuted for employing children as cheap labor. I guess in some countries we might have a struggle in terms of balancing on one hand what's good for the economy of that particular country, and then holding to account those people in big business. Is there that sort of struggle to balance those two, do you think?
I mean, the two, it's not a binary thing, okay, right? We have seen people who do good business actually or do good business and have a child labor-free industry. So we've seen industry that really have cleaned up their supply chain. In addition to that, actually, in terms of the legislation, again, because of this crisis, what we're saying, do not relax your legislation. Do not relax your monitoring. This is the time for you to double down on your monitoring and the legislation. So What we're asking actually is those industries that are already self-regulated to double down and make sure that actually the children do not slip into their supply chain. And what we're saying actually, we find actually the children are caught up more in low-tech industry where there is no significant technology. Two, children are more, the likelihood of them being engaged in their family business and businesses that, you know, like agriculture in Africa, is heightened at this time. And what parents are going to do, they would end up making the unfortunate choice, the children out of school, and using the children as excess labor in the farm.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Cornelius Williams, Associate Director of Child Protection at UNICEF. Thank you very much for your time today on World Day Against Child Labour.